16th November 2009. Address of the Apology to the Forgotten Australians and Former Child Migrants. Great Hall, Parliament House. Today, the Government of Australia will move the following motion of apology in the Parliament of Australia. We come together today to deal with an ugly chapter in our nation's history, and we come together today to offer our nation's apology, to say to you, the forgotten Australians, and those who were sent to our shores as children, without your consent, that we are sorry. Sorry that as children you were taken from your families and placed in institutions where so often you were abused. Sorry for the physical suffering, the emotional starvation, and the cold absence of love, of a tenderness, of care. Sorry for the tragedy, the absolute tragedy, of childhoods lost. Childhoods spent instead in austere and authoritarian places, where names were replaced by numbers, spontaneous, play by regimented routine, the joy of learning by the repetitive drudgery of menial work. Sorry for all these injustices to you as children who were placed in our care. As a nation, we must now reflect on those who did not receive proper care. We look back with shame that many of you were left cold, hungry, and alone, with nowhere to hide and nobody to whom to turn. We look back with shame that so many of you were left cold, hungry, and alone, and with nowhere to hide and with nobody, absolutely nobody, to whom to turn. We look back with shame that many of these little ones who were entrusted to institutions and foster homes instead were abused physically, humiliated cruelly, and violated sexually. And we look back with shame at how those with power were allowed to abuse those who had none, and how then, as if this was not injury enough, you were left ill-prepared for life outside, left to fend for yourself, often unable to read or write, to struggle alone with no friends and no family. For these failures to offer proper care to the powerless, the voiceless, and the most vulnerable, we say sorry. We reflect too, today, on the families who were ripped apart simply because they had fallen on hard times. Hard times are brought about by illness, death, and poverty. Some left destitute when fathers damaged by war could no longer cope. Again, we say sorry for the extended families you never knew. We acknowledge the particular pain of children shipped to Australia as child migrants, robbed of your families, robbed of your homeland, regarded not as innocent children, but regarded instead as a source of child labor. To those of you who were told you were orphans, brought here without your parents, knowledge or consent, we acknowledge the lies you were told, the lies told to your mothers and fathers, and the pain these lies have caused for a lifetime. To those of you separated on the dockside from your brothers and sister, taken alone and unprotected to the most remote parts of a foreign land, we acknowledge today that the laws of our nation failed you, and for this we are deeply sorry. Also think so today of all the families of these forgotten Australians and former child migrants who are still grieving, families who were never reunited, families who were never reconciled, families who were lost to one another forever. We reflect too on the burden that is still carried by our own children, your grandchildren, your husbands, your wives, your partners, and your friends. And we thank them for the faith, the love, and the depth of commitment that has helped see you through the valley of tears that was not of your own making. And we reflect with you as well, in sad remembrance on those who simply could not cope, and who took their own lives in absolute despair. We recognize the pain you have suffered. Pain is so very, very personal. Pain is so profoundly disabling. So, let us together, as a nation, allow this apology to begin to heal this pain. Healing the pain felt by so many of the 500,000 of our fellow Australians who were children in care, children in our care. And let us also resolve this day that this national apology becomes a turning point in our nation's story. A turning point for shattered lives. A turning point for governments at all levels and of every political hue and colour to do all in. Our power to never let this happen again. For the protection of children is the sacred duty of us all. This is a motion that later this day the government will commend to the Parliament of Australia.